Hello everyone, welcome to eGATE.ai. This is last lecture of the introduction topics, and in this lecture we are going to just go through the summary of all the topics we have studied very quickly. So first one was database and DBMS. So if you recall, database was collection of related data. So if I may write it, collection of related data, right? I'll just write it in short. While DBMS is a software to manage this data, right? So it's a software. Now we studied file system and database system and the differences. So there are two things I would really want you to remember. One is that there is nothing you cannot do with the file system which you can do with the database, but we now know that it's not efficient, right? We can end up spending a lot of time, and we will be eventually be making another database system which will, which is not efficient in terms of budget and time. So you can, so technically you can do everything with the file system, right? But this comparison is between normal files, like one of the file you create, like text file and database, something like this. And the second one was that sometimes in some cases file system can be better than database, right? But if we talk about the differences, we studied differences at various level, right? And that was basically the differences between in terms of organization, access control, permissions, concurrency control, integrity, right? Consistency. So all these were the factors where we saw that database is better than file system, right? Furthermore, we studied data model. So in data model we studied hierarchical model, right? Then we studied network model. In hierarchical model you had 1 to n, like one parent can have multiple child, while in network model it was n to n, right? Many to many relationship. Then we also studied ER diagram, like ER model, then relational model. Then we studied object oriented model, then object relational model. Apart from this, we also studied some modern types like NoSQL, where we studied like document, columnar, key value pair, right? So all these were the data models we studied here. Schema instance and metadata was something we studied, where schema is, as you can recall, it was blueprint, right? Blueprint. Instance is snapshot of database, right, at a particular moment, and metadata is meta information about the schema or database, like all the names, table names, data types, etc., and the relations between the tables, all those meta informations, right? Then we move to data independence. We studied that there are there are two levels where data independence can happen, like or we can call it physical data independence, right, and logical data independence. And we studied that any change at physical layer does not affect logical layer, right? So this is physical data independence, and then any change at logical layer will not affect the application program or something. So it is logical data independence, the independence at logical layer. We also understood what are data abstraction. So there were three levels where at which we work on data abstraction. Again, it's physical, right, and then logical, and then view layer, right? So these are the data abstraction layers we understood. And then finally we also learned about database users, right? So database users, we learned about DBA, we learned about application program, application developer, learned some naive users, where in naive users we learned about basically these are end users, right? And inside end user you have naive user, you have application program, and then you have sophisticated user. Apart from all these user types, we also studied that there is a data scientist or data analyst role, right? And then there is something called system user, right? So these were the user types. And finally, we just learned about database architecture, where we learned that there can be three architecture: one tier, two tier, and three tier. One tier talks about having just database, two tier talks about having interface with database, right? This is just database. And then three tier talks about having this user agent, that is user which interacts with application layer, right? And then this application layer interacts with the database, correct? So this is basically three-tier architecture. So this was all about the introduction. Now in the next lecture we'll start ER diagram, right? So before we start that, you make sure that you solve the quiz or the test which will be floated after this summary, and try to analyze your learning so far. So thank you very much. I hope you are enjoying the sessions, and do let me know if you have any question, any doubt. Thank you.